The shooting down of Malaysia Airlines Flight MH17 is a sobering reminder that for the first time in a while we have a shooting war in Europe. Our next guest says the world needs to focus on this conflict because it just became very serious. It's RAND Corporation senior political scientist Christopher Chivvis. He joins us now from Washington. Mr. Chivvis, thank you very much for being there.
Thank you.
Why do you say this now has become serious? It looked fairly bloody over the last few months. Why does this take it up at another level?
Well, I mean, obviously the loss of such a large number of civilian lives from so many different countries immediately brings, I think, as one of your earlier commentators said, the geopolitical question much more quickly to the fore. We have, for the last couple of months, since Russia withdrew its large number of its forces from the border with Ukraine, focused on a number of other issues in the Middle East, elsewhere in the world. But obviously this is going to redirect global attention to the fact that there is a shooting war in Europe and that war is becoming increasingly violent, and that the costs are growing for everyone.
The costs are certainly growing for everyone. Do you think that Europe will be pressured to step up? I mean, Germany, the most powerful country in Europe, has really hesitated on military action probably for very good reason in the last 70 years. Maybe they will now. What do you think?
I think we're not only hesitated when it comes to military action, but also to the further rounds of sanctions that have been put on the table. We obviously saw the United States go ahead with another round of sanctions. We saw a more lukewarm reception to that from our European allies. The reality is that public opinion in countries like Germany and other important countries in Europe is very skeptical about the links between what's happening in Ukraine and their own security and their own economic welfare. And frankly, it remains to be seen whether or not this will change that in any significant way. I think if it turns out that there's a smoking gun that points towards Moscow, that could have a very significant impact on how Europe responds to this crisis. On the other hand, there's no guarantee that we're going to get a smoking gun. What's likely to happen in the next few days is probably a lot of finger pointing, and we may not have much clarity. If that happens, there won't be a big impact.
Now, you think that this plane may have been shot down by accident. What do you mean an accident? Because missiles that fly that high into the air are not things that sort of go off by accident typically.
I mean, I think it's extremely unlikely that any of the potential parties that fired this missile intended to take down a civilian airliner. And in that sense, it's probably not accurate to call this an act of terrorism, because when you talk about terrorism, you're talking about an intended act to kill civilians. Most likely what this was confusion in the fog of war, and that resulted in this tragic incident and loss of civilian life.
I mean, is it hard to detect using this equipment what is a civilian plane and what is a military aircraft from 30,000 feet on the ground and up into the sky? Is that something that's typically very, very hard, or is it something that can be done relatively easily?
It depends upon the type of radar system that you have. I'm not an expert. If this was indeed a Buk system, I'm not an expert in it, but it's quite possible that it's very difficult to distinguish between a civilian airliner and any other kind of military aircraft of similar size.
Okay, thank you very much, Chris Chivvis of the RAND Corporation. We appreciate your time, sir.